My privilege to welcome Maria Andreoli to our program. Maria is a psychologist, and today she's going to be teaching us how to deal with people when they are showing external displays of anger. How do we respond to that when they're throwing their rage fits right at you? Maria, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me back, Scappy.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. So, Maria, this is a very interesting topic that I find because often when people are somehow raising their tone of voice against us or they're being patient, I often get into like a freeze state and I don't really know what to do and my brain just wants, okay, comply. How can we give a better response to that? What should we do? How can we train our minds to respond to it in a more productive way?
Yeah. So it's really important to understand the anatomy of the brain, right? And because we are operating out of different parts of our brain based on what's going on around us. And what you've just described, you said that you shut down, right? You freeze.
Yes. Yeah. That's often a common reaction that I get in those scenarios.
Yeah. And so what you've just described there is you're in that moment, you're operating out of the lowest part of your brain, which is the brain stem, and that's your survival brain, right? So primarily you're operating out of that lowest part of your brain, and that's when we get our fight, flight, or freeze. And chances are that the person who you were arguing with maybe had done something, maybe they were getting louder or using a certain tone that kind of signaled that they were also operating out of that lower part of their brain, right?
Okay.
So I guess like signs that someone is using that part of the brain is they might raise their voice, they might be yelling, they might be storming off, pacing, crying uncontrollably, or just in like a total shutdown. And it's really important to know that when you're using this lowest part of your brain, you are in absolute just survival mode, and there is no amount of reasoning or logic or productive conversation that is going to come out at that time.
So you're saying that it's not a good idea to try to, calm people, to try to negotiate with people when they are in that sort of a survival mode? Because you mentioned that freezing is part of the survival aspect of the brain, but also rage, when people are having a fit of rage or a meltdown or something like that, they're also not in their rational brain, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, look, you cannot use logic. When someone is in this state of rage or complete shutdown, they are absolutely disengaged from another part of their brain, which is their frontal lobe, which is their like logical brain, their problem-solving brain, their ability to self-control. It's shut off. So there is absolutely no point even trying to engage in a conversation at that point.
Okay, so what do you normally, how do you see this perspective? What have you learned into like best practices and help us to walk through of what could be healthy ways to deal with these kinds of either someone that is having a meltdown or like a big reaction, both when they're coming from children, also when they're coming from adults. Like how should we respond?
Yeah, so we've talked about the brain stem, right? Which is a survival brain, which is like fight or flight, complete shutdown. I've touched briefly on the frontal lobe, which is the top of the brain, logic, reasoning. And then there's also the limbic system, which is the emotional brain, right? So just keeping those three different parts in mind. And there's a approach that is called the 3 R's of regulation. And the 3 R's of regulation is all about matching the way you respond to someone based on what part of their brain they are using, right?
Okay. All right. So how does it work?
Well, I think the first step is you've got to actually be able to identify. And look, if you're thinking clearly, it shouldn't be too hard to be able to see what that other person is feeling or like what part of their brain they're using. Like we've already kind of realized, like if they're shut down, if they're absolutely yelling, they're probably in their survival brain, right? If they are just a little bit more in control, but still really emotional. So like maybe a child saying, that's not fair, or someone seeking a lot of reassurance. They're probably operating out of that middle part, their limbic system. And if they're like calm and they're, talking logically and thinking clearly, they're probably using their frontal lobe, right? So when we know what part of their brain they are kind of operating out of, we know how to respond.
Okay.
So 3 R's, right? 3 R's of regulation. So the 3 R's stand for we either go to regulate, we go to relate, or we go to reason. Are you following me?
I'm following. So regulate, relate, and reason. So I'm assuming here
Yes.
that regulate is used when your counterpart is in survival, using like the lower brain, survival brain, fight or flight. Regulate if they're relate if they are having like an emotional kind of a middle brain kind of experience, and then reason if they are using their frontal lobe. Is that right?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so
awesome.
how do we regulate? So let's start with that one. What can we do to regulate people's emotions?
Maybe I wonder if it would be good to use an example here. You mentioned like with a child, right?
Yeah,
So let's say a child is having a meltdown. I don't know, really typical example. They're having a meltdown. They're, really emotional. And it's, they might be very loud or yelling or just crying a lot. And it's really clear, okay, this kid is operating out of their survival brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, the first thing that we need to do is we need to regulate. So as hard as this may be, as a parent, it's actually so important that we maintain very calm. Keeping our voice very calm and just recognizing like, I can't reason with this kid right now. Their frontal lobe is absolutely just not in place. There's no point trying to tell them what they did wrong at this moment. I'm not saying not tell them at all, but at this moment, nothing is going to land. My only focus is to regulate this child so that they are they're operating out of a different part of their brain. So I'm lowering my voice, slowing down, maybe staying present, but like not in a threatening way. And just my only focus right now is calm. Is helping that child to feel calm. Or if that child is getting violent, risky, then my only goal is to keep them safe, right?
Okay.
And I can worry about the other stuff later.
Okay. So you're keeping your voice kind of a calm, and by talking to them, what can be said in that situation to help them to bring them back down? And would the same thing apply for an adult situation? Let's say you're at a supermarket and there's like someone yelling at you. They're angry because they perceive that probably, I don't know, you entered into their you cause a damage to their goods or to their car or something like that. How do you deal in these situations, or like a road rage scenario, for example?
Yeah, so like there's not a great deal that you can say. Look, like say with a child, like it's just about helping them calm down, whatever that means, like maybe removing them from the situation, staying very calm. If it's an adult who you know in your life, it's also just like that same thing, just like your calm presence can help to regulate them, right? If it's an adult who's a stranger and they're yelling at you in public, then I think you just need to get away from them. Like there's not much you can do to regulate them. There's not even a connection there, right? So that you don't really have much ability, much power over their emotions other than to just remove yourself if you're the problem in their point of view, right? Then that would be regulating, just, but look, once the person does start to calm down, just by, trying to be very calm in your approach, waiting for it to pass, then you'll notice that they'll start to calm down a little bit and you'll find that they start to go into their emotional brain, right? The limbic system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So like they'll start to, there'll still be emotions there, but they won't be completely shut down. They won't be completely yelling. They'll just be more emotional. So they've calmed down a bit. Now, this doesn't mean that they're thinking clearly yet.
Okay.
They're still they're now up in that limbic system. And this is where more of that communication can come in. This is where we're onto the next R, which is relate, right?
Okay, 'cause this is very interesting, Maria, because I never thought that. So there's like phases, like you're jumping from your survival brain to your emotional brain, and there's like a pathway to back
Yeah.
to the frontal lobe. I thought that
Yeah.
you could just like jump from one to the other and skipping kind of the middle process of the emotional brain. But you're saying that there's actually a gradual process of how the
There's a
brain
gradual
would be working.
process.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And at this point, you can actually you can help them switch back to their frontal lobe a little bit faster if you get this step right, if you don't miss this step, and which is the relate step, right? And this is a part where, they're just using their emotional brain. And this is just the part where we acknowledge their feelings. We provide validation, warmth, and connection. Connection is so powerful for helping a person really just calm down. So say that child who's having that, they've had their meltdown, they're now switching, they're calming down a little bit. They're not in absolute fight, flight, or freeze, but they're still emotional. It's just acknowledging their feelings. I can see that you're upset, or that was really frustrating, and just providing a lot of warmth and care. Yeah. And we'll see that if you maintain a habit of doing that, the child does learn to manage their feelings much faster. Or if you do that with an adult as well, it's after a conflict. And if you just take some time to see where the other person was coming from and really kind of validate that, even if you don't fully agree with them, just acknowledge, what they were feeling, you'll watch them calm down much faster. And then their frontal lobe switches back on, right? Their thinking brain is back online. And then you'll see that they're able to reflect now. They can discuss what happened. They can consider consequences. This is the bit where you can reason with a person, where you can talk logic, where you can set boundaries or talk about better choices.
Okay, so you're saying here that in this middle process, so after that initial fight or flight or freeze mode, if you just kind of calm down, perhaps in a dangerous situation, you try to remove yourself from that situation, as much as possible. Then after things are subsiding a little bit, you can acknowledge. And I heard one person saying that if you can name it, you can tame it. Naming the emotion.
Yeah,
say,
that's a good phrase.
Look, I can see that you're very frustrated right now, or I can see you're very frustrated, or you're very angry about something. Let's talk this through. Just kind of helping to reboot the brain with relating to them, like kind of telling them, like, look, I'm seeing you, I'm hearing you.
Yeah,
I know what's happening, and that will further help to regulate the brain back into a position where we can talk, hey, how can we make this better? What can we do different next time? How can we make better choices, or what can we change? So is that process that, did I get it right? Is that kind of how the process works?
Yeah, you're spot on. Yeah, you're spot on. So it begins with regulate, then we go to relate, and then we go to reason. And it's that last stage where we can, talk about maybe what was the way we viewed the situation, or what are some better ways we could approach it next time.
Okay.
Where we can problem solve and talk about next time. Yeah.
That's amazing. Maria, thank you so much. So we have about 28 seconds, about a minute left here in that segment. And what could you say in terms of advice for people that, struggle with response? So what would be a summary or a word of encouragement perhaps that you could offer to people that have to deal with either children or even adults in their lives that find it a hard time to regulate their anger?
Well, look, the thing is, if we're dealing with someone who struggles with their emotions, then often we now are also in a state of survival as well. So I would say, as a priority, before you can do any of these steps, you need to regulate yourself first. You need to be able to step away and find something that helps you find calm. And with that, you'll find more strength to be able to approach the person and help them regulate, relate, and reason.
Yes, absolutely. Regulate, relate, and reason. And of course, finding a way before that ourselves, so we can regulate ourselves, relate to ourselves, and reason with ourselves before we can help others with their journey. Maria, thank you so much. That was really informative. And I would like to invite our listeners, if you have any questions, any issues that you'd like to share with Maria, maybe we can talk about it next week when she comes back. Send us a message here to 0491 064 669. Maria is with us every Wednesday here to talk about mental health and better ways to deal with these challenges that we find. Maria, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to talk to you again next week.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.